I mean, this is an absolutely Herculean effort, and one only needs to look at the scenes, harrowing scenes on television, to realise what a brilliant job, particularly, those young servicemen and women are doing. Just such extraordinary compassion and humanity and chaotic scenes as tens of thousands of Afghans, many of whom are not entitled, seek to escape from the Taliban. And of course, that's clogging up those who should be entitled, who need to get out and into safety. I mean, are they doing enough? I don't think we're doing enough on the interpreters. I've been very vocal on this one. Many of these interpreters have been in the pipeline waiting for relocation for a number of years. And we know of many who are still stuck in Kabul waiting to be called forward. There are others in other cities who are not able to come to Kabul yet. There's no point in them coming until they know they're going to be evacuated. I'm very disappointed, I'll be honest with you, with the Ministry of Defence, not our soldiers and our servicemen, but the Ministry of Defence and the way in which they're handling these interpreters.
When you say that, what you're talking about, the civil servants?
The strange thing at the moment is all communications with these interpreters is being run by a group of volunteers, a network of volunteers, nearly all armed forces veterans. The only communication, the only messages, the only hope is provided by volunteers. There is simply no communication between the Ministry of Defence officials or the Foreign Office officials and any of these interpreters. Most of them have not had a single message, no indication, no communication whatsoever. We've gathered lists of hundreds of interpreters who have applications in the pipeline. Some of these men have been waiting since December. They were told they were eligible in December. But meanwhile, what we're seeing is what appears to be, and I'm cautious about saying this, a patronage-based system where others, non-interpreters, are being called forward. And now I say that with great caution, but this is the message that we've been pushing into the Ministry of Defence. This is what it looks like at the moment. Our interpreters seem to be being left behind in favour of various other groups.
Charlie, I mean, let's talk more about that. I mean, 50 interpreters have apparently been contacted by email, we were reading this morning, with no response. I mean, they've gone missing. Is that of great concern, or are they... I mean, a lot of people are having to hide, aren't they?
I mean, I'll be honest with you, I think that's indicative of the broken processes in the Ministry of Defence. People who've probably been in this application pipeline for 8 or 9 months. We have their WhatsApp numbers, by and large. We've begged the Ministry of Defence to share with us the names of those who've been called forward, but haven't received an email. But they won't share it with us. They won't share it. So there's every possibility that there are individuals we are in touch with, and the MOD is saying, tell them to shelter in place, tell them not to call forward. But these could be amongst those 50, but the MOD is saying that. It's extraordinary.
I don't know if you won't have seen some of the papers this morning. There's one photograph on the front page of the Metro this morning, shows a British corporal holding a young Afghan child in his arms, been handed to him on the wall of the airport at Kabul. He says, I was just doing my duty. It's more than that, isn't it? This is very personal for a lot of soldiers still serving there.
An awful lot of those young paras will have served in Afghanistan, particularly them the non-commissioned officers, the sergeants and the officers. This is deeply personal to them. I mean, let's not forget, these are some of the toughest troops in the world, 2nd Battalion, the Parachute Regiment, in the most incredibly chaotic, hostile environments at times. And as I said to you, that compassion, that humanity, it's just indicative of how much they care. I really feel for these young servicemen and women. Sometimes going into the crowd to rescue people who've been crushed, this is our armed forces at their very best. It really is.
I mean, yes, you say tough, but they're still humans. And I was reading earlier in one of the papers about a baby being born on one of the US planes. They stopped in Germany, or they were headed to Germany. I mean, you can't fathom what these people, these amazing, men and women are doing. But how do they cope? I mean, what help do they have to keep going with this? I mean, do they have counsellors out there as well?
I couldn't tell you that. I mean, one rather hopes they've taken their padre who's giving them that pastoral care, which is done brilliantly, I have to say, in the military. I mean, there's very well established trauma risk management processes to support servicemen in these cases. And I imagine they're going through that, and they are going to need help when they come back. But all credit to them. But, let's not forget these brave Afghans who are trying to get into the evacuation centre, who are spending 24, 36, 48 hours trapped in those crowds, children being injured. I mean, we don't know the exact figures. My understanding is dozens of people are dying in these crowds. The level of desperation of these Afghans to get out of the country and get away from the Taliban. It's heartbreaking when you speak to them, when they're in that crowd. When they've been there for 24 hours, some of them have been turned away. They're told you haven't got a passport, which is wrong. They shouldn't be. And it's an administrative error by somebody at the gate. But it's just heartbreaking. Pregnant women, and 2 children, as you say, incredible. And all credit to the British military, as we say, yet again. What an extraordinary job. But what's so sad is just how avoidable a lot of this was. We mustn't forget, this is an entirely self-inflicted humanitarian disaster because of the folly decision to withdraw from Afghanistan in that nature.
Charlie, there's some pressure on G7 to talk to Russia, to China, about how to handle the fallout to all this. I mean, you're a former NATO advisor to the Afghan police. Where is NATO?
That's a good question. Where's the coalition of the willing? As I see, NATO looks pretty disempowered. This was a NATO operation, resolute support, that followed, the NATO operation when combat operations finished in 2014. But what we see was a unilateral US decision to withdraw. And the other 20-plus NATO alliance members looked completely powerless, including the United Kingdom, I'm afraid. Unable to summon up a coalition of the willing within NATO to stay on after the US announced their withdrawal. Is there much that we can do without US support? If the US decide that they are pulling out at the end of this month, I'm not sure. I'm just not sure how much we can do without US support at this stage.
How depressing is that?
Well, as a serviceman, there's a reality about this. There's no doubt about it. The real muscle within NATO has always been provided by the United States. It's ever been thus. And the US have done heavy lifting in this Afghan campaign, and we must acknowledge that. They have taken significantly the greatest proportion of casualties, and they have still been in the fight, over the last 5 years, with people on the ground supporting these Afghan troops. But no, there's a harsh reality, that nobody could compare in terms of defence spending and defence capability with the United States. That's just a reality, I'm afraid.
Welcome to the GB News YouTube channel. You can watch us live 24 hours a day, catch up on your favourite shows, and join in the conversation in the comments below.
Don't forget to subscribe and you'll never miss any of our exclusive content.